Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday morning devotional time together. So glad that you could join me this morning or whenever you're watching this. I hope you were able to be with us on Sunday or have watched the service on YouTube, Facebook, or our website. We had a special guest and good friend, Brett Ullman, with us. And he talked about faith and culture, and how it's so important for us as people of faith to engage the culture, yet the tendency sometimes is to put a wall between that to protect us from the culture or to run away altogether, sort of fight or flight reaction. And yet we're called by Jesus to be salt and light. And I found Sunday to be incredibly encouraging yet challenging. I want to continue that conversation as we look into Acts chapter 17 this morning. Paul and his friends, Silas and Timothy among them, go out on a mission trip. Right before Acts 17, we have the story where Paul and Silas are in prison singing hymns, and there's an earthquake, the doors fly open, and the jailer's going to commit suicide rather than bear the shame of losing all these prisoners. And Paul says, "Don't hurt yourself, we're all still here." And through that act of kindness and sharing the gospel, he leads the jailer and his entire family to Christ. After that, they go to Thessalonica, and things are going well as they share the gospel with people there. But some jealous folks stir up a mob, and that mob chases Paul and the team out. They end up in Berea, a nearby town, sharing the gospel again. Things are going well. And then a crowd shows up from Thessalonica. That same mob scares them off and runs them out of town. Paul goes ahead to Athens. It says in verse 16 of Acts 17, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see all the idols. Athens being a major center in ancient Greece, of course, all the Greek gods, the statues, the temples, it would have been very obvious and conspicuous. It's also important to note that it distressed Paul. It broke his heart because, well, two reasons specifically. One, it meant that the honor and worship that God deserved was being given to these statues. And also it meant that people who were spiritually hungry didn't know how to connect with the true God. And so they found these other ways to express their spirituality to no avail and to no effect. You don't have to look hard in our culture to see things that could be called idols. People, things, priorities. And for each of us, it's a little bit different. Most of these things aren't even bad in and of themselves. They just become problematic when they are the most important thing in our life. And we should be distressed when we see them. But look at how Paul handles that distress. It says that he goes first and speaks to the religious people. He goes to the synagogue and he shares with people who believe in God about Jesus Christ and the gospel and salvation through the death and resurrection of God's Son. But then it says as well, he went to the marketplace and spoke to those who happened to be there. Now, the marketplace was not where you went shopping. It was a public space. It was a forum of sorts where people would debate and they would make an attempt at being a philosopher and share ideas, challenge ideas. This is an important space to be. Some people I've heard describe it as a cross between Twitter and a coffee shop. It's a place where ideas are shared, but it's a little bit of a free-for-all. There's not a lot of control. And, as Christians, sometimes it can be a very intimidating place. I mean, we can talk in church and everyone sort of has a similar worldview and foundation. And even if someone disagrees with you, usually for the most part, they're not going to shout you down or try and embarrass you. But you go into the public space, you go into the common space, the marketplace, and you're taking a risk. Yet this is where Jesus went. He went to where people are. I think that's important. Now, he did such a good job that they invited him to the Areopagus, which let's just simply call it a stadium for debating. It was a very formal place where people would go to present ideas, and the The philosophers of the day would give their opinions and debate and discuss and disagree. It was actually probably a bit of an honor that Paul was asked to present, but it also reflects that Paul was very skilled at what he was doing. I loved what Brett said on Sunday when he said we need Christian writers who are great writers and great Christian actors and musicians. We need great Christian plumbers and engineers and teachers and athletes. We need not just great Christians, but Christians who are good at their craft, who have worked hard at it and excelled, because that gives us platforms to speak, to connect with people we might otherwise not be able to connect to. Paul's skill in speaking actually gave him this massive platform to share the gospel. Notice what he says. In verse 22, people of Athens, I see that you are very religious. He looks for common ground. Sometimes as a Christian, I think I'm spiritual, and people who aren't Christians, they're not really spiritual. They're not bad people. They're just not. Well, the truth is we're all spiritual, because we were all created in the image of God and we have a hunger for spiritual things. That's why there's so much spiritual material at Indigo and Chapters. That's why there's all kinds of books about different kinds of spirituality and why it's so popular. He says, I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship. He knew they were spiritual because he actually took the time to observe, to listen, to watch. He read an inscription to an unknown God. If you want to understand someone's spirituality, if they're not a Christian, ask them about an important piece of art hanging in their house or an important geographical place that has great meaning to them. Ask them about a tattoo they have. Often these things reveal a spirituality. Paul says, I read the inscription on your idol. I took the time to do my research and to respect you enough to try and understand and connect and find that common ground. And Paul does it again. Here's the common ground. You're worshiping an unknown God. I just happen to know that unknown God, and I'd like to tell you about him. In verse 24, the God who made the world and everything in it, the Lord of heaven and earth, the creator God, the God above all gods. And as a matter of fact, isn't it interesting? Paul says the God you're worshiping, the God that not my, let me introduce you to my God. He's saying, look, this is the God. And I can introduce you to him because I know him. But he goes on to say he does not live in temples built by human hands. Again, this is Greece. There are temples built by human hands for the gods. Our God doesn't need a temple. He is not served by human hands. He doesn't need anything. Rather, he gives himself, or gives everyone life and breath and everything else. Our God doesn't need anything from you. He wants to give. He's a generous God. He has an offer for you. And then notice, from one man, he made all the nations. So he talks back to Adam, how they're, again, common ground. You and I are related. We all came from one person. Not saying you're not like me, I can help you become like. No, we have common history. And then God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out and find him, though he's not far from any of us. Paul is speaking to people that either believe the gods are far away on Mount Olympus or the gods are far away. That God is far away in heaven, and that God is holy and he's so distant from us. No, God is so close. You can't imagine how close he is. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. He quotes an Athenian poet. I love it. You know, sometimes it can be so engaging for you to connect with someone over a musician that they like or an author that they like. It doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that musician or author sings or says. It doesn't mean that we're endorsing it, but that research is a great connection point, and it allows us to help people understand that God's fingerprints are everywhere throughout creation. Now things are going so well, and Paul has the crowd in the palm of his hand. And then he says, He commands people everywhere to repent. Anytime you ask people to repent, now people start, whoa, time out. What? I'm not a bad person. Everyone needs to repent. And he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has proven who this man is by raising him from the dead. You lost me, Paul. It says, when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some sneered. But some said, I'd like to hear more. And some, they followed Paul and they believed in what he was saying. I think this is fantastic. It's a good reminder that even if the gospel is presented perfectly, some people will just walk away. They'll sneer. And others, they'll be curious, but they won't grab it. But some will. Jesus offered the gospel and some people walked away. Other people followed, but some people believed. I hope you're encouraged by that. And I hope you're emboldened to go to the marketplace, the common space, to share your ideas, to look for common ground, to listen to other people's ideas and engage with them, again, through that Christian world view. Hey, if you're watching this and you're a parent or a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, a teacher, or just an adult who cares about kids and youth, why don't you come next Wednesday? Brett Ullman is coming back to the church to talk about parenting, but also just to talk about youth and the culture and how we can help as adults in the lives of youth and kids in our church and in our community. Hey, I hope you have a great week. God bless you. Look forward to seeing you soon.